Well, let's fix the audio. Finally. Every time I pull up this stupid online thing, I have to change which audio source it is because, every once in a while, it switches up. So I believe we've got it changed. And somebody in the comments tell me if we got it all fixed up. But anyway, welcome to the program. I really appreciate you joining us. Finally, it's Friday. When you have a primary election on Tuesday, it always feels like Friday is never going to come. And to a great degree, sometimes it feels like, that all hope is lost. But you know what? I was talking to my dad yesterday, and, his question was, and, you would think that being related to me, my family would, have a pretty good bead on everything. But the truth is they kind of try to avoid it. My sister is, she's a Republican. Generally speaking, she's pretty conservative. My parents are very, very, very conservative. And, but they really don't follow politics all that much. And I know from you, my audience, you might think that how is that possible? But it is. So yesterday I'm talking to my dad and he says, well, son, how did things turn out? And I said, well, we're not in charge anymore. And the Democrats are. And his comment was, we survived 8 years of Obama. And then another 4 years of Joe Biden, not that long afterwards. He said, we'll get through this too. He says, all the same, though, I'm packing my go bag. You'd have to know my old man. He's got a bumper sticker on the back of his truck that says extremely right wing. So anyway, I guess the good news for today is that we got through it before. We'll get through it again. And our job now is to hold them all accountable to what they said, because just about all of them had the word conservative all across their campaign flyers. So anyway, our job is to hold them accountable, and that starts, well, actually, it started today, but it'll really start today. Oh, and by the way, it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. It is Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. Normally during the week, if I have the phone lines open, you kind of got to talk about what's on my mind. This is, after all, that's why you listen to this show, is to hear what I'm thinking about. Not on Friday. On Friday, if you wish, you are in complete control of the program. And so if you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number that will get you directly to me. So whatever you want to talk about, I realize the giant barrel of Democratness that I'm probably opening. Just about everybody's got a feeling on how the election went, and I think all those viewpoints are important, because there are a lot of people that are disappointed. But like I've been telling you all week, it's not the time to panic. Don't worry. If it is time to freak out and panic, I will let you know. But we're not there yet. So on today's show, I want to begin with a warning that was delivered to Wyoming Republicans back in 2020. And I was sitting in the front row when Charlie Kirk delivered his speech over in Gillette. And he said that in 6 years, this state is going to flip to blue. And, you can hear, when I play the video for you, you'll be able to hear some of the gasps in the audience. Like, oh my God, there's no way that this is going to happen. Because you got to remember, at the 2020 convention, the Wyoming Republican Party was riding high. We had the control of the state party. At the time, Trump was the president, though, later we found out what was going to happen with the 2020 election. But everything was good, man. The convention itself, there was a whole bunch of redcoats from Cheyenne and from Casper that tried to derail the convention. We got them stopped. But at that time, everything was good. So here is what Charlie Kirk told Wyoming Republicans at the convention in 2020 that was held in Gillette at the Camplex. So hold on, let me get there. There we go. The 21st. Here we go. Charlie Kirk, 2020.
But I'm going to tell you something shocking right now. I'm a data guy. And I spent about an hour and a half yesterday, late at night, going through your trends, going through voter registration numbers, going through voting records. You guys are 6 years from making this a blue state. 6 years.
There's the gasp.
6 years, this will be a Democrat state, maybe less. So we can celebrate. We're all doing great, right? 6 years, this is Colorado. I look at outward migration trends that are only going to accelerate because people are coming in from other states because they've screwed up the rest of the country. The state's very attractive because of a 0% income tax. Liberals are coming here quickly, and they're teaching your kids to hate the country too. And so, if you're not serious, if we don't get serious about this very quickly, a decade from now, I'll be invited to the Lincoln Reagan Day dinner or something and be like, yeah, the Democrat governor, and my goodness, will that be a sad day. If Wyoming turns, and if you don't think it's possible, just look at other states around you. Look at Montana. Look at Christine Noem, had an unbelievably close race for governor. It was within like 12,000 votes. Colorado used to be a deep red state. Nevada used to be a deep red state. They've all turned. Now remember the trend. The left takes, the left, if there's one thing you take away from this, it's not exactly the most enlightening thing to remember, but it's the left destroys everything it touches. They're like locusts. They take something over, they move to the next thing. They take something over, they'll destroy everything. They destroyed football, they destroy music, they destroy fine art. The left is a relentless force of destruction. And they're coming for Wyoming, if they're not already here. And they're going to try to infiltrate your party. They're going to try to infiltrate your political class. They're going to try to infiltrate things that you care about, infiltrate your churches. And I hope that's a wake-up call for all of you, because I used to come to many states that are now blue states that were once red states that 8 years ago I wouldn't have dreamed. Texas is now a battleground state. Arizona is now a battleground state. Georgia is now a battleground state. And the reason being, number one, is Republicans refuse to fight, and we elect the Democrats that call themselves Republicans. Number two, that we just completely vacated the entire cultural landscape. So,
okay, so there in 2020, that's what he said. Now, the question is, was he right? Well, the majority of people that won on Tuesday's primary are not conservative. Now, they all call themselves Republicans, that's for certain. But the question is, are they actually Democrats? Well, when you look at the data, and, I don't have to go back to evidence-based Wyoming and show you again how often Eric Barlow voted with the Democrats. That's pretty easy to figure out. It's, somewhere between 80 and 85% of the time, he was siding with the Democrat majority. On issue after issue after issue, Eric Barlow voted with the Democrats. And, one that I'm going to focus on right now is House Bill 200 from 2020. That was a carbon capture mandate that was put on Wyoming coal-fired power plants. And let me just give you the background of it. At the time, we were dealing with Joe Biden. Or, we were just about to deal with Joe Biden. And we knew that those mandates were coming. And so the idea was, well, let's get ahead of it. We'll do things the Wyoming way. That's how it's always put down at the legislature. Wyoming solutions for Wyoming problems, which generally speaking means, yeah, we're going to do it the Democrat way, but we're just going to claim that it's Republican. I mean, that's pretty much how it always goes. And I can't tell you how many times I heard Mike Greer, former representative from the Bighorn Basin, get up at the microphone and be like, oh, yeah, this carbon sequestration thing, it is great. We're going to put all this carbon underneath ground, and it's not going to poison the atmosphere. As if any of us are really possess the power to affect the climate. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a few of you out there that think that that's possible, but climate change is a hoax. In the history of the world, do you know what the number one, and this is kind of, I say this kind of half-heartedly, but do you know what the number one contributor to CO2 is in the entire world? Historically speaking, do you know what the number one contributor is? It's not cars. It's not volcanoes. It's forest fires. And do you know what is the chief? Oh, Kenneth Dugas. Oh, buddy. I'm going to deal with you in just a minute. There was a comment dropped. All two of the Democrats? I'll get to you in just a second, Kenneth. Anyway, but the number one contributor to CO2 emissions is forest fires. And do you know what causes forest fires? Most of the time it's lightning. And Who, might I ask, is in charge of lightning? God. Okay. I mean, I'm half-heartedly joking, but it's absolutely true. Lightning causes forest fires. But in 2020, well, there was a big effort to get a handle on this whole thing. And so we set up this scheme and forced coal-fired power plant or electrical power producers to put carbon capture technology on all their plants. It's horrendously expensive. And it had the great result of increasing our electricity rates by over 200%. There was a study done in 2022 that was published in, I can't remember the journal, I can look it up, but a scientific journal that said that this bill would most likely increase the price of electricity by 237%. And now, how many times has Rocky Mountain Power come back and said we need to increase rates? It's like every year, and your electricity bills are exponentially higher than they were before. So that was Eric Barlow. He's the one that voted for that bill. The guy has a very long history of radical environmental politics. In fact, right before the election, maybe 2 weeks before the election, I published an article on the Open Range Record. Let me see if I can show it to you. This whole screen share thing, I always complain about it, but let's see here. Where is it? Entire screen. Okay, so you know what? Let's just do it this way. Screen's gonna look a little weird for a minute. Oh, see, there it goes. But here is the article. In 2003, Barlow, through a letter, gave testimony to the United States House of Representatives. And here's what he said. Let me quote it to you. This leads me to my final point, which is where there has not been a meaningful acknowledgement that we must move beyond non-renewable sources of energy. It is time for this nation to be a world leader and transform our energy paradigm. True security for this nation will be based in part on clean and sustainable sources of energy. It is reasonable to expect that fossil fuels will have a role to play, but it must be one of transition and not of reliance. The cost to our resources and security are far too great to continue as we are. So the guy that is, 90% chance of being the governor, that's him. And so we all knew, or at least we should have all known exactly who we were electing. And yet the Barlow campaign was able to con a lot of people to vote for them. Now, the question is, who voted for them? Well, it certainly wasn't the conservatives. Most of them voted for Brent Bean, and some of them voted for Megan Degenfelder. Those two put together, more Republicans in Wyoming voted against Eric Barlow than voted for him. So we know it wasn't the majority of Republicans. But was there a significant influence from the Democrat Party? And so the answer to that is yes, but not in the way that you think. Now, the media, there was a gigantic push. So, and if you remember back in May, it said, oh, don't forget to change your party affiliation before May 14th. And it was on the front page of every paper. There was incessant ads on the Cowboy and Facebook, and every social media platform was telling you to change your party affiliation. And it, and basically they all said, and they never came out except for Liz Storr. Liz Storr at a forum in Jackson that I attended. She did come out and say, and it was all Democrats in the room. She said, well, you need to change your party affiliation so we can support the best liberal candidate. And of course, that's Eric Barlow. But how big of an influence did the Democrat Party have on that election? Now, the Cowboy's got a piece out entitled, "No, Closet Democrats Didn't Nominate Republican Barlow for Governor," politicos say. Now, the people that they quote, that Claire McFarland quotes in this, are probably the furthest left that you could possibly get, or they're straight up rhinos. But here's the opening paragraph, what she says. Eric Barlow would have won the GOP nomination for governor without potential Republicans in name only ideological Democrats voting in his favor, Wyoming political analysts say. The numbers say that too. Quote, I don't think Democratic crossover voters influence election outcomes in Wyoming, Jim King, retired University of Wyoming political professor, told the Cowboy State Daily in a Thursday phone interview. If you look at the percentage of people in surveys who identify as Democrats and the percentage who register and vote as Democrats, they track closely, he said. Wyoming registered Democrat percentage is just over 11%. The surveys show 17 to 18%. Independents also bring play to the Republican primary election. However, let's see here. Rob Wallace, longtime politicos and former assistant Interior Secretary during the first Trump administration. Quote, he's a total rhino, by the way. The fact is, these are Wyoming people that were voting for governor, said Wallace. They weren't people from Colorado or Idaho or Maine. Why are you milking mice about a question like that anyway? Okay, so we know it wasn't actually the Democrat Party this year. But how many Democrats have switched from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party? Let me give you a hint. So there was a presentation done by the Wyoming Secretary of State. And let's see here if I've got it. I don't see it. Okay, so here, we'll do this crazy screen thing again. Just hold tight. Okay, so in 2026, and this is a presentation from the Wyoming Secretary of State's office about party switches. And this was put out, I think that all of this, okay, so these numbers reflect January 1, 2026 to May 13th of 2026. And you can see the numbers are actually pretty low. From Democrat to Republican, 1732, unaffiliated to Republican. I'm going to count those as pretty liberal voters, too. Constitution and Libertarian to Republican, 65. Okay, not a big number. Unaffiliated to Democrat, and the rest of them. And the one curious number here is Republicans to Democrats. So 400 people that were already in the Republican Party said we're going back to the Democrats. So that's 2026. And those numbers, there's only roughly around 2,000 votes there. That's not enough not anywhere close enough to elect Eric Barlow. But if you add in what happened in 2018, which was the first time that Mark Gordon got elected, you can see the numbers are significantly higher. In fact, if you do the math on those, it equals out to about 12,000 votes. So 12,000, 2,000, that's 14,000 votes. Still not enough to elect Eric Barlow, but still a giant chunk of votes. Now, the second place finisher, Megan Felder, she lost by 30,000 votes. Okay, that's a huge number, 14,000. It's not even half. Okay, pretty close to half, but not even half. So the question then is, where did all of those other votes come from? Well, they certainly didn't come from conservatives. I don't know a single person who is actually a Democrat who would, in good conscience, vote for Eric Barlow. I'm sure there were a few that were duped. But anyway, so where did the rest of them come from? Well, people like, and I'm going to use Roger McDaniel as a great example. So Roger McDaniel was a Democrat in the House of Representatives a long time ago. Then he switched to Republican. And until very recently, he was one of those 401 people that switched back. But until very recently, he was a registered Republican. And if you read Roger McDaniel, he calls himself a pastor. He's the guy, and this is an episode from a really long time ago. But he is the pastor that told his church, and he used to publish his sermons online. But he told his flock, his church, you need to repent for your white privilege. He's that kind of pastor. Okay, so clearly not a Republican, definitely not a conservative. I have been in the county clerk office many times when I've heard Wyoming county clerks tell people, hey, you need to register as a Republican because if you don't, you won't have anything to, you won't have a say in the primary. Oh, excuse me, I just got corrected. So Degenfelder, it was 20,000 votes, not 30,000. So excuse me on that one. Thank you for the correction. So anyway, there have been a ton of people in the Republican Party for a really long time. Another one of those, which is kind of this guy, he really irritates the crap out of me, Darren Rogers. He lives here in Sheridan, and I mean, the guy is a straight up redcoat. He writes letters to the paper, and you can just tell. I mean, he's not a conservative Republican. Now, he has been in the Republican Party since 2022. He moved from Colorado to Sheridan, bought property, and then registered as a Republican. And it's very clear. You can just read his writing, and it's definitely not a Republican. So there's a huge number of those people that have, either A, registered as a Republican when they moved to the state, or they've been longtime Democrats and they register as a Republican. They just never changed. So I think that there's a pretty good argument to be made that the very, very liberal wing of the Republican Party, which is made up of, a lot of people who really their political views line up with the Democrat Party platform. Like Melissa Butcher, who just won the Senate District 21 race. I mean, unofficially, of course, it hasn't been certified yet. But on her website, she's in favor of elective abortions. That's not a Republican idea. We're kind of against abortion. She's, and you can read her website. I mean, it is chock full of all sorts of Democrat initiatives, more government spending, more Democrat influence in the economy. Micah Sturdivant in House 29, another really good example, which, by the way, I wrote an op-ed yesterday and published it on the Open Range Record, and I called it the Cowboy State Contradiction. And it is a really, really in-depth discussion of how the cowboy state, that is, the people who believe in rugged individualism, actually voted for the opposite, government dependence. So that's the top story on the Open Range Record right now. But I talk about a lot of this, how the Democrat Party, well, you see, so the very first person that Claire McFarland from the Cowpie goes to is Rob Wallace, a straight-up redcoat. Yeah, he did work in the Trump administration, which I guess that gives him a little bit of cred. But, I mean, if you just read his comments in just about every article, they're saying, well, there's not enough Democrats to make a difference. The Democrats didn't do it. Maybe not the Democrats this year, but it was the Democrats and the very liberal people that inhabit the Republican Party. People like Gail Simmons and Rod Miller and Tom Lubnow and Marcia Newmiller. And we could go down the list of people who very much are not conservatives. And if you took their political ideology and lined it up with the Democrat Party platform, you would see so many similarities. So, Kenneth, Mr. dropping a comment, being a Democrat, you need to stop looking at the surface level of everything and trying to convince people that all of these people that voted for Eric Barlow are really conservatives, because they're not at all. And so, you have to be an observer of Wyoming politics for a pretty long time to understand how many actual Democrats are in the Republican Party. Now, the truth is, back in, I would say, late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around there, the Democrats had, pretty close to a majority. Pretty close, not a majority. Pretty close to a majority in the Wyoming House of Representatives. Now they're down to like 6 seats, or, we'll find out what the actual number is in November. But, they did have a big influence. So where did all of those voters go? Was there an immaculate conversion to conservatism? No. There are people like Eli Bebout who switched to the Republican Party so that he could remain in power in the Wyoming legislature. And from that point on, stayed in the Republican Party. I mean, that guy's not a conservative, doesn't really hold any conservative positions. But he switched in 1994. He was in Democrat leadership in the House of Representatives, but he watched the trend of them losing seats, and so he realized that his influence in the Democrat Party was really going to fade away, and so he switched during the 94 election, filed to run as a Republican, and magically got elected. And then he was a Republican from then on out. You can't tell me that overnight that guy became a conservative Republican. So there's that. Now, what about the conservatives? What did we do in this election? Well, quite frankly, we dropped the ball. We had two extra people in the governor's race. Now, I would never argue that Megan was anywhere near as conservative as I am. I mean, she voted with Gordon most of the time. But If you add up the number of votes for Megan Felder and the number of votes for Brent Bean, that would have handily beat Mark Gordon. And so the question is, we got the vote split. Now, what about the other candidates in the race? Let's just kind of move on from the gubernatorial race. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but the Democrats had a much better ground game than we did. Using Senate 21. I got a couple of messages yesterday from a couple of people in Sheridan that said that they saw, Micah Sturdivant and Melissa Butcher people at their house lots of times, way more than they did for conservative candidates. So our ground game wasn't as good. And I think that just an honest assessment of that, absolutely. There was a ton of money that was dumped into this election, and there was an alliance between a lot of different groups that all converged on this election to flip it. And I think, in retrospect, looking at the legislature, the guy that's in the corner office or that has a really good chance of being in the corner office, Charlie Kirk was right. And I don't think that. I mean, it would take a lot to convince me otherwise. So what do? Well, we continue to fight. We hold these people accountable. We hold them accountable to everything that they said in the election. And we record every stupid Democrat thing that they say on the floor, because I got to tell you, my friends, when they get to the legislature, they are not going to be able to help themselves. I've been watching the legislature long enough, my friends, and those people say the dumb. You remember the Art Linkletter books? Kids say the strangest things. Radical liberal Republicans say the strangest things, especially when they don't have to worry about being beaten on a vote, because there's no reason for them to hide now, and the Wyoming media will help them. So anyway, my friends, that's the long and the short of it. Cowboy, you're full of crap. It really was the Democrat influence, just not this year. And it tells you, and here's another thing, right? The depth of thinking of the Wyoming media. And this is how stupid they think you are. They try to convince you that, well, it's not the Democrats didn't do that this year. They think that you're stupid, honestly, that you don't know enough about Wyoming politics, that you'll believe this drivel. And what leads them to believe that is their analytics on the website, how many views they get. But that's the depth of thinking, that you'll believe whatever they say, and you'll just go with it. So let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue with Open Line Friday, 307-374-8989. Give me a call if you want to talk. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. On the top 100 conservative podcasts in the entire country, my friends, nobody comes close to Cowboy State Politics. And thank you. And that's all due to you. Listening to the program, supporting the program. I really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and take a call, and let's talk to Councilman Moody in Cheyenne. How are you doing this morning?
Could be better. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. You know what? I could be better too. It's true, but I'm in a great mood. And, we got a big challenge ahead of us. That's okay. I think it's nothing we haven't done before.
No, I was just thinking, since the general election is coming up, a lot of these conservatives that lost their primaries looking to running for school board, looking to running for community college boards or fire districts, et cetera. You can have an influence there. That's a good way to rebuild.
You bet. I could not agree with you more, Mark. You are absolutely correct. You are much more likely to lose your liberty at the local level than you are coming from Cheyenne, and definitely coming from Washington, D.C. Just think about what's happening in Cheyenne right now with that the petition on the data center. You got a city council that's just trying to ignore statute. Can you fill us in on what's going on with that, Mark?
Sure, absolutely. So essentially, and I supported the petition, even signed it there, it could be verified, but pretty much the mayor now wants it to be reviewed by a judge saying, hey, is this legal? But yet I clearly said, statute says we're allowed to petition and say any ordinance, including annexation, or claiming there's another law that says it has to go through court in that, which is very confusing. So that's why I voted no. I was the only no vote on the city council to have it go for judicial review. So.
Yeah, and I mean, it is astounding to me that Wyoming law says that you can petition against any, and it's a, and you're going to fill me in here, Mark, because I don't really know the details, but it was a zoning protest. Is that what it was?
Annexation protest.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially what happened is, a bunch of people signed a petition, according to Wyoming statute, took it to the city council, and now they're saying, yeah, we think the judge has to review this, because they know that it probably won't be resolved until after the election.
Yeah, and I will say this was a bipartisan issue, a true bipartisanship. Even, all factions of the GOP were signing it, Democrats, independents. This is a bipartisan issue, and I do want everybody to know, please stay informed, because these local races are very important, and that's why I think conservatives do need to run for these. It's not like the state legislature, I get that, but you have more impact on your communities throughout the state if you run for school board, fire districts, et cetera. I recommend everybody doing that. I just wanted to say, you talk about Democrats, Republican parties, the opposite in deep blue states. I commented in Rhode Island, you had a lot of Republicans run as Democrats there, and the same thing. And it may shock everybody. Rhode Island's a very deep blue state. You have the very liberal Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
I love that guy.
Yeah, but yet they actually have a strict voter ID law in Rhode Island. And actually, for a long time, didn't have, for a deep blue state like Rhode Island, not very strict firearm laws. So it's a problem, I'd say, too, not just in red states, because South Dakota, Montana, and Idaho, as Daniel Horowitz said, experience similar things like us with the legislature. But even in deep blue states, you have these similar issues as well. So just don't think it's just here in Wyoming. It's other red states, and even other deep blue states where you have Republicans running as Democrats. And like right now in Massachusetts, they passed that crazy law. You actually have a lot of Democrats that are, protesting the governor there. So it's in deep blue and deep red states. It's the same issue.
It is. Earlier this summer, I was in Salt Lake at a conference, a John Birch Society conference, and I was talking with people from, Montana and Idaho and South Dakota and Nevada and Utah. And really, what we experienced in the election in the primary election is very much the same thing that happens in all of those states. And it's, when I went to college in Colorado in, early 2000s, it was Wyoming with more people. And really, and Mark, your point is so important because that is exactly how the Democrats started to flip Colorado. They started with local boards. Local boards turned into city council turned into county commissioners turned into the state legislature, and voila, within a decade, it's a blue state.
Exactly. So I encourage all the listeners, you have till Monday, I believe. I know that's what it is in Laramie County, to run for these various positions. You will have an impact. And like I said, people lost the primaries. You will have a big impact. You can even reuse, say, some of your materials as well, and you're not going to have any PAC money coming after you for, say, a fire district.
Right. Or maybe a school board. You'll probably have the School Board Association. Exactly. Or the teachers union. But there's a lot of local boards, man, that have a lot of influence on your community. One of those is the library. Hey, you want to know the House Bill 10 that was in the legislature? You want to know who controls the library? The library board. You know who decides which books get ordered and put on the shelves? The library board. So if that's your big issue, there you go. Mark, I appreciate the call. You're exactly right. Couldn't agree with you more.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Okay, so that was Councilman Mark Moody in Cheyenne, and he is hitting the nail on the head this morning. You are much more likely to lose your liberty at the local level. And let me give you an example. Okay, so a couple of years ago, there was a couple of city councilmen in Sheridan, and they decided that they were going to pass and I'm not even kidding you. If you don't believe me, we can get Holly Jennings on the show, and or we'll call Kristen Jennings. She was on the city council, but Holly's a county commissioner. But they proposed an ordinance to mandate that you trimmed your dog's toenails. Not even kidding you. And it got defeated. Okay, but still, that is the dumbest thing that you could possibly do. Another one in Buffalo, and a lot of communities have this, a nuisance ordinance. Okay, so the one in Buffalo, it literally said that your grass can't be over 6 inches tall. Now, I would argue that you should probably mow your grass if it's that tall. But still, it's your property. The government can't tell you what to do on your property. Or in Gillette, there's ordinances that you can't work on your vehicle in your driveway. That it's your driveway, and you have to remove, if you've got a vehicle that's not running and you're working on it, yep, can't have that. Got to have it covered up. So those are all things that are passed at the local level. And it's the way that you stop that is you run for, of course, you can't run for city council. That filing period is closed, but you can run for the boards. In Johnson County, the most important board is the board of the dump. Not even joking. More money goes through that thing than any other place. The school boards. You want to have an influence on what's happening in your kid's school. That's the place. We've got a school board member in the audience right now, Tony from, was it Platte County? I think Platte County, Goshen County. Anyway, he says if Christian conservatives concern themselves with school boards, the up-ballot races will take care of themselves, to paraphrase Bill Federer. But see, all of those things are important. And again, a great movie. If you haven't ever seen it, it's called Rocky Mountain Heist. You probably have to Google it. You're not going to find it on Netflix or any of those. But it's the story of how Colorado was flipped. And there's a lot of similarities to what happened in Colorado to what has happened in Wyoming, what we saw in the last election. So anyway, really important, man. If you want to, if you lost your primary election, there's no reason why you couldn't run for a school board, or you couldn't run for the museum board or the hospital board. Every community has a slew of different boards that are all elected positions, and they all need people. And, if you want to have an influence, there you go. Maybe you got to swallow your pride a little bit, but that's an easy way to do it. Okay, so moving on. I want to do some national stuff this morning. Now, I've been telling you, I kind of didn't really get into it too much, but the The Democrats nationally have been building a movement for a very long time. Who could forget? When Barack Obama got elected. I know you think you were bummed out Tuesday night. What about when Barack Obama won the election? I mean, we kind of all knew that was going to happen. By the way, we did survive 8 years of him. But who would have thought? In 2000, he couldn't even get on the floor of the Democrat convention. Okay, and in a couple of short years, four short years, they had him behind the podium, and then he was running for president, and then he was running for president again. And so the Democrats have been building this machine for a really long time. And, who could, let's see here, who could forget? Let me find a good soundbite for you. There's so many of them when it comes to Barack Obama. Let's see here. How about this one? Let's see. I got it unmuted. Nope. Here we go.
With respect to the pledge I made that if you like your plan, you can keep it. I think, and I've said in interviews that there is no doubt that the way I put that forward unequivocally ended up not being accurate. It was not because of my intention not to deliver on that commitment and that promise. We put a grandfather clause into the law, but it was insufficient. You have an individual market that accounts.
I don't know what that one is. What I was looking for is the one that's like, you didn't build that. If you dock your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Okay. Well, maybe I'll find it later. But there's a piece from, I believe I found this on Breitbart, maybe. No. I found this on The Blaze. Let me just read you the opening paragraphs here. Barack Obama once delivered a line. Republicans never let him forget. You didn't build that. Today, the Democrat Party could say something similar to him. Barack Obama didn't build Barack Obama alone. The transformation Obama promised in 2008 is still underway, and he is content to let others finish it. The talent, intelligence, and ambition were his, but the stage belonged to the Democrat Party. Its donors supplied the money, its convention supplied the audience, and its voters supplied the office that transformed a little-known Illinois politician into a global figure. Now the institution that helped build Obama is struggling to decide what it believes. Obama turned 65 this month. He's 4 years younger than Donald Trump when Trump came down the escalator. Whatever one thinks of Trump, the Republican Party did not build him. He arrived with his own fortune, celebrity, audience, brand, and then captured the party despite the resistance of much of the establishment. Obama's path was nearly the reverse. In 2000, he couldn't even obtain floor credentials at the Democrat National Convention. 4 years later, the Democrats put him behind the convention lectern. 4 years after that, he was their nominee for president. The Democrat Party didn't merely nominate Barack Obama. It introduced him to America. And for more than a decade, opposition to Trump supplied Democrats with something resembling a governing philosophy. Rage generated money, turnout, and unity. And listen to this part and tell me if this makes sense with what happened on Tuesday. But rage is fuel, not a destination. And Democrats are discovering that when Trump is removed from the sentence, they have difficulty completing it. The party's ascendant left is now captured. Okay, so before we go on there, now think about all of the press coverage in the last 2 years. Pretty much every single article you saw, definitely from the cow pie, had the two words Freedom Caucus in it. Pretty much all of them. And, it was very similar to what happened with Donald Trump. Now, it's still this way. If you look at any article in Politico or from the New York Times, or pick a liberal outlet, and you will find that the name Donald Trump is in there somewhere, or Trump administration, or Trump president. I mean, it's almost ubiquitous. Compare that to Wyoming. Over the last 2 years, pretty much, and it was either Freedom Caucus or Checkgate. One of those two was in just about every article about politics in Wyoming. And the whole idea was to generate rage and to use misinformation to do it. Now, another great example this morning. So, and you're just going to have to stick with me here because this is going to be kind of a long lead-in. But Ogden Driscoll was on the Cow Pie, Jake in the Cow Pie this morning, and he says that he pretty much ran a clean race. Yeah. The words Ogden Driscoll and clean race shouldn't appear in the same sentence. But here's a video segment from this morning on the Cow Pie, and it's Augie. Now, it's kind of long, and we'll probably do a stop and start. But here you go. Watch this.
One more thing on the campaign. Was there negativity that came from you? I know Representative Nyman at times didn't like the campaign strategy that came from Senator Driscoll. Did that derive from you? Was there any mudslinging here? What happened?
That's a big variance of opinion. And, we actually, even on the last call of the night, talked about it. And, no, in my opinion, I've asked people to go back. Basically, my campaign was run through a social media campaign as a whole. And I encourage people, no posts have been taken down, go pull back my Facebook posts and take a good look. And, my feeling was from start to finish is I posted bills and votes and did what I felt like were, at one point in time, they said, well, all you're doing is talking about negative things. So then I started posting.
Okay, all right, whatever. Okay, so he says everything is still posted. I ran a pretty clean campaign, essentially. That's what he's saying. Okay, so let me show you that. Well, let's see your screen share, and we'll do that. And let's see here. Where is it? All right, here, the screen's going to look a little bit weird. We're going to have to continually do this the entire time, but here we go. Nope, the other one. Okay, here we go. So this is a post from July 13th on Ogden Driscoll's Facebook page. I grabbed this morning. And what he had done is reposted one of the terrible posts from the Libertarian Party of Wyoming. And let me just read to you what it says. A quick reminder that the Wyoming Freedom Caucus voted twice to allow adults to have sex with children. And it goes on, and there's Augie saying, this is so true. The vote is telling from the crew that doesn't want to help take care of children and kids' mental health bills. Let me just read to you the bottom of it one more time. A quick reminder that the Wyoming Freedom Caucus voted twice to allow adults to have sex with children. That isn't true. Okay, so what they're talking about, and I don't remember the bill number, but the child marriage law. Now, here's how it actually works. So you got to have the permission of both parents, and often it has to go to a judge in order for an underage person to marry an adult. Here's the other reason. And so, all right, there's legal procedures in place that weren't touched with that bill. And basically the bill was, I believe its sponsor was Dan Zwanitzer. And he wanted to completely eliminate marriage for anybody under 18. I think it was 18. We'll have to go back and look at the bill, but we'll just say minors, okay? Now, there's a couple of problems with that. First, we don't want any more government involvement in something that doesn't have anything to do with the government, right? Marriage is a union between a man and a woman before God. If you look up marriage in the dictionary, that's what it says, okay? So, and secondly, there's already Wyoming legal procedures in place to where you have to have the permission of both parents, and oftentimes it has to go before a judge. So, and the other reason why you don't want to completely ban that is what happens if you have, I don't know, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and the girl gets pregnant. What do you do there? Is it better for them to raise the child, or is it better to just force them to give it up for adoption? Or is it better to allow them to marry? Now, it wasn't that long ago where the average marrying age wasn't 18. I mean, you go back 50 or 60 years, and it was pretty regular that people got married at 16, 17. If you go back further in our past, and I'm not condoning this, I'm just saying that historically speaking, people who were a lot younger got married. But the bill itself would have completely banned that. So two problems with it. One, it would have further inserted government into marriage, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why you don't want that. But second, it would have eliminated the possibility of arguably a young adult getting pregnant and getting married. That's why. Now, the bill did not allow sex with children. No, it did not. The statutory rape laws are still in effect. The laws of, and that's another thing too. So the post from the so-called Libertarian Party of Wyoming, which isn't, it's a Democrat front. Nobody really knows who owns it or if it actually represents the Libertarian Party. But to just blatantly say that it allows sex with children is just flat untrue. And what did Ogden Driscoll say about it? Oh, this is so true. The vote is telling. No, it's not true. And that's not what the vote is about, and it's not what the bill did, and it's not the reasons why the Freedom Caucus voted that way. Now, the reason they voted that way, even on a politically perilous vote, why did they vote that way? Because it was the right thing to do. Even though people like Ogden Driscoll, who now claim that they ran a clean campaign, said, no, that was totally about having sex with children. Right. And Ogden Driscoll posted. Now, I can't think of a more despicable, well, I probably could, but in terms of Ogden Driscoll's campaign, that was probably the most despicable thing that he did. But let's listen to a little bit more of what he says.
Accomplishments, and one of the quotes was, "Well, don't break your arm patting yourself on the back." So I kind of felt like I got trapped on both ends of it. And, a local fire I showed up and fought fire at, and they said, "Well, we're tired of politicians at the fire." So a week later, we had a fire on our ranch, and we kind of got our side put out, and I went to Gillette to the junior livestock sale, and the quote was, "Well, you've got a fire in your place. Why in the world are you in another town campaigning?" And
oh boy,
those happened. And I can tell you, I felt like I took the high road. The Flyers did not, for all of us. For the public out there, I sent one flyer in the campaign.
Yep, I can't listen to any more of this, my friends. I took the high road. Other people did not. No, that's not true. And if you know anything about Ogden Driscoll, I don't think that Augie even understands what the phrase high road actually means. But it's more bullcrap coming from the left. Let's see here. Patrick wants to know, has a write-in candidate ever won an election for the Wyoming House or Senate? Ooh, not that I'm aware of. Now, there was Jim Roscoe, who he lost his seat and then ran as an independent. And of course, to run as an independent, you have to have a petition. As far as I know, a recent memory, that's about as close as we got. I mean, a write-in candidate. Now that they've happened in local elections, but I don't think that there's ever that I remember one being in the Wyoming House or the Wyoming Senate. That is such a high bar, but it's not undoable. I mean, all things are possible in politics, but man, I think that one's tough. So there is Ogden Driscoll and the negative campaigning, the so-called Libertarian Democrats, which is really what they are, absolutely lying. So no doubt about that. Americans for Prosperity, they went on a probably what it's going to end up being like a $300,000 campaign of misrepresenting votes. And pretty much every flyer I have, I moved to the giant stack of campaign flyers, but you look through all of them, pretty much everything from Americans for Prosperity has an absolute mischaracterization in it. Some of them don't even have anything to do with the bills that they cite. But all of that is a political machine, and it has been building in Wyoming for a really long time. Now, I kept telling you, I've been saying this for over a year. If the Democrats can get 200 people, 200 or 300 people on the steps of a courthouse in Wyoming, in downtown Sheridan, and Sheridan is pretty darn conservative, though, the rhinos won all the elections here, but I mean, the people are. 86% of the population is Republican. The Sheridan County, the county party pretty much still have, the conservatives still have the majority in the county party. So pretty conservative. But if their Democrats are able to do that, what else is building behind it? It's never what you actually see. It's always what is behind it. Now, it takes a lot of work to get that many people, out on the courthouse steps and protesting to a stupid No Kings rally. It gets a lot. Sometimes it takes a lot to get people to draw swastikas on a piece of cardboard and hold those out publicly. But that's the public face of it. That's what you see. That's not what's behind it. And what's behind it is a coalition of different groups both Democrat and allegedly Republican, that were building this machine to take over this election. And the truth is, without pulling any punches, conservatives got caught on our heels. Literally, it's the same thing that happened 2 years ago to the Redcoats. They thought they were going to win the election, and they were completely taken by surprise. Same thing happened to us this election. So moving on with the piece, and let's see here. Okay, yeah, let me do a little bit more, and then we'll take another break. Now we have the party's ascendant left has now captured Michigan's Democrat Senate nomination through Abdul El Sayed, who's backed by Bernie Sanders. This is the crazy guy that wants to seize the means of production, just like his pal Mamdani in New York. Now, after his victory, Obama called him for what the Democrats described as a really warm conversation. Of course they did. Because Barack Obama, remember, he's the guy that said we are 5 years away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. That was not a one-off line. That was him being honest about what's going to happen. And now, here we are, let's see here, 12, almost 14 years later, and we're finally seeing, well, in Wyoming, we're finally seeing the results of that. Now, so that call between Obama and the crazy commie in Michigan, it raises a question Obama has so far avoided. Does the party's left represent an unruly faction, or is it becoming the party's center of gravity? Democrats talk endlessly about virtues of a big tent, but a big tent without a center pole is just a big tarp. Obama remains the one Democrat with enough stature to supply that center. Now, he's not disappeared. He endorses candidates, gives speeches, and meets privately with lawmakers. Those appearances may help individual candidates. No, they don't provide a direction for the party that increasingly seems unaware where it wants to go. Obama once possessed the power to name a destination, hope and change, invited millions of Americans to imagine a country beyond the politics that they knew. So where is he asking the party to go right now? Good question. And we'll answer it when we come back. Now, admittedly, I didn't update the ads again, so you'll hear a couple political advertisements, but there's a couple of ads in there I got to get to. So we'll do more in just a couple minutes. Hold on tight. And it's still Open Line Friday. If you want to be on the show, 307-374-8989. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
This is Brent Bean, a Republican for governor. Wyoming families know what matters: law enforcement, emergency services, and supporting strong schools, agriculture, and energy production. But state government keeps growing while priorities fight for resources. That has to change. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending and priority problem. Vote for me on August 18th, and I'll put Wyoming priorities first. I'll return taxes to you, the taxpayer, and make Wyoming number one. Paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, the big voice on Wyoming's right. Welcome back to the program. And just to kind of give you a recap of where we were, we started with the coalition that came together to win the 2026 primary in Wyoming. And it was a coalition of the radical left in Wyoming, and we do have a radical left. Carly Provenza is all you got to say. And the local Democrat parties who, hold protests with swastikas, on all the signs. So that's pretty darn radical. They made a pact with and I don't even think they really had to make a pact because they're pretty much the same people. However, they got together with the Democrats that are hiding inside the Republican Party and with a bunch of advocacy organizations, including Americans for Poverty, Americans for Prosperity. And that coalition came and it didn't help the matter that, we had a little bit of hubris in us. And conservatives, I'm not saying this for every conservative. There were people that worked really hard on the ground that got beat anyway. But you cannot deny that, man, we got a butt whooping of epic proportions. But the question is why, right? Most of it is we were not prepared and our candidates weren't funded well enough, and we didn't do a good enough job campaigning, and there was a couple of things that really didn't help. Messaging was one of them. As a rule, we suck at messaging, and the Democrats are really good at it. The Democrats, Better Wyoming, totally run by Nate Martin. It's not a conservative organization. Nate Martin is Carly Provenza's husband. They're both Democrats. Liz Storr provided the money. The Democrat Party provided the money for a major Democrat. I'm not saying the party itself, but major Democrat Liz Storr provided the cash for Better Wyoming to launch their campaign, and they were relentless. Anti-abortion groups the same way. The Wyoming Education Association, same thing. So it was a coalition of all of the leftist groups, and frankly, Republicans didn't have enough actual Republicans didn't have enough. And so the question is what is happening nationally, is that happening here? Well, first, let's take a pretty sober view of what's happening, at the national level. So in Michigan, you got this Abdul El Sayed. He's the guy that says government wants government to seize businesses. You have the National Democrat Party, who they're kind of floundering to figure out who they are. And there are candidates in other states. Let me give you a great example. So Texas is pretty much, it is a kind of a bigger version of Wyoming. The left has been trying to take and flip Texas for a really long time. They got a lot more people. It's a lot bigger state. But really, generally speaking, Texans are pretty darn conservative. And if the Democrats can flip Texas, well, that is another crown jewel. Now, I would say flipping which they pretty much did, flipping the most conservative state in the union, that's a pretty big feather in their cap. But here is what the Senate candidate James Tallarico says is what's happening in Texas. Listen to this.
The Texas State Representative James Tallarico is the Democratic nominee for Senate in Texas. He joins me now. Good to see you again, sir. Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with this whole idea that the richest man in the world is funneling money against you in your race. He has specific interests in Texas, business interests, and reasons why he doesn't care to have you as Texas's representative in the Senate. But how do you feel about that, and how do you plan to campaign around a massive injection of money that's about to show up in your state?
Well, billionaire mega donors like Elon Musk are terrified of the movement that we're building in Texas, because we are bringing working people together across all the divides in our politics, across party, across race, across gender and religion
party.
And culture.
You hear that?
Because the real fight in this country is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. All of us are getting screwed, whether we're a little more conservative or a little more progressive. None of us can afford groceries. None of us can afford gas or utilities or health insurance, because billionaires like Elon Musk have rigged this economy against us, have rigged this political system against us. And he sees the momentum that we're building on the ground. We have 59,000 people signed up to volunteer. We have shattered grassroots.
Okay. All right, so that's enough of that. But you get the idea. He blatantly told you that the Democrats and the Republicans are working together to campaign for him against Ken Paxton. And he goes on in that soundbite to say that Ken Paxton is like the most corrupt politician in America. So that's in Texas. Now, I don't think that Tallarico is going to win, although he stands a pretty good chance of doing that. So if Texas gets a Democrat senator, wow. I mean, that would be, in my mind, that would be equivalent to Robert Byrd beating Harriet Hageman for the U.S. Senate seat. I don't think that's going to happen. She beat socialist Sam Mead by 37 points, so I don't see why we should really have to worry too much about Robert Byrd. But don't think for a minute that the Democrats are not going to campaign on his behalf, and they will be aided by the liberal Republicans. But of course, for right now, the liberal Republicans, I mean, they kind of have to still kind of keep their mask on a little bit because the election is not officially over. And so they'll do it clandestinely. Same thing that's happening in Texas. You've got that coalition. It's pretty much the same coalition that happened in Wyoming. So before I go on, let's go ahead and take another call. And I think we're going to talk to, let's see here. Let's talk to Charlie Cole. Charlie, how you doing this morning?
Not new.
How's it going this morning,
good.
Charlie?
How are you doing?
I'm good, man.
Hanging in there. You know, I've been listening to your show this morning, and I was taken back in my mind to you mentioned Obama. You know, about his business of fundamental transformation. It's interesting. Nobody in the press in those days had he was talking about the fundamental transformation of the United States of America. Nobody had the even curiosity to say, transformation into what?
Right.
Well, I think we saw that during the Obama administration. But as I walk through memory lane, and people might want to Google these, they're very interesting. In the 2012 campaign, I remember they ran this interactive web tracking thing. It was a fictional cartoon. It was called The Life of Julia. And it showed how these federal policies, Obamacare, Head Start, student loans, Medicare, all this. Oh, it just took her all the way from, age 3 all the way to 67, and the government was just taking care of everything they needed. And the Biden people also came out with one. They called it The Life of Linda. And that was the same kind of thing. And it showed how expanded child tax credits, government-backed child care, pre-K, Pell Grants, and all this kind of stuff. This is what you're seeing in a lot of these people that have voted for the Sturdivants and the Butchers and the rest of them, because this is this addiction to government. It starts small, but it metastasizes, and they're jumping around celebrating all this. I agree with something you said the other day. Okay, let's sit and watch what they do now, because eventually they're going to show people that that's who they really are.
Yes.
And when they do, then people can decide for themselves, do you really want this? Do you really believe that the government can, provide your health care? Obamacare just worked so well. So we'll see, but that's who these folks were. And I watched a group of young ones at the Republican debate. I was sitting in the back of the room, and I watched them. They were like a cheering session.
Yes.
Everything Micah Sturdivant said, and everything Butcher said, they were, yay! So I thought, okay, we're back to the Life of Julia. Okay, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, now the debate was interesting because it didn't matter what they said. I mean, it could be the most inane comment or, just kind of a meaningless retort. They would cheer. And it didn't really matter. Like when we took a straw, of course you were there, you saw the straw poll. It didn't matter who got beat. The debate did not matter to them. They just voted for their candidate. And what's going to happen, it's like I said the other day, Charlie, eventually they're going to take the masks off. Right now they're celebrating, they're taking their victory lap, which, okay, so admittedly they are entitled to it. But when it gets down to business, they're going to show people who they really are.
Yeah, and as far as their victory lap, I was on your Facebook page there, and I put up a little post, and it was from old Samuel Adams. I love it. If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go from us in peace. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. So let them celebrate, and the only thing I would say to them is, you better be careful what you wish for, because you're just liable to get it. And I think they're going to get it. And it's going to be interesting, and I'm sure you'll be watching them very carefully up close and personal. And thanks for all you do to follow that stuff and report it back to us, because it's important for people to know. Folks, watch what these people do. Never mind what they've said. Forget all that stuff. Look at what they're going to do. And like you said, the masks will definitely come off. Never mind. Okay, thanks, David.
All right, thanks, Charlie. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Now, the soundbite that Charlie was referring to was this one.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Well, and the crowd goes wild. But as Charlie said, nobody ever asked, so what is that transformation? What does that actually mean? Now, we all heard Michelle Obama say this.
If you like your doctrine.
That's not it. Hold on. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. This is the right one.
And Barack knows that we are going to have to make sacrifices. We are going to have to change our conversation. We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. We're going to have to move into a different place as a nation to provide the kind of future that we all want desperately for our children. And he is the man to do it.
Yes, he was the man to do it. Now, I'll say this again, and I maybe you've heard me make this comment before, but with the exception of the 2020 election, because I am even, as time goes by, I'm more and more convinced that election was rigged. But with the exception of that one, voters always get, they always get what they deserve. And there has never been an American election that was wrong. Voters get what they deserve. And with Barack Obama, probably the best conversation I had was with my mom. During the first election of Barack Obama, I was one of those people that read his book. And I was like, oh, my God, we have no idea what we're doing. And I called my mother, and I'm like, Mom, you cannot vote for this guy. He's not going to win in Wyoming, but still, don't vote for him. And her reply was, well, you know what? I think it's time. We haven't had a black president, and I think it's time. I'm like, okay, maybe it is. But that's not him. Not him. He is not Martin Luther King. Well, actually, he had a lot of similarities to Martin Luther King Jr., believe it or not. But anyway, the second election came around, and I called my mom back, and I said, so, you going to vote for your guy again? And she says, hell no, I'm not going to vote for him. Okay, so at least she learned. Well, Wyoming citizens are going to learn what this election means. And it is, buckle up, my friends. They're already talking about expanding Medicaid. I saw a post the other day about legalizing weed. I mean, they are going to go for broke. Now, they would be, okay, so they learned their lesson in 2024, in the 2024 election, that they got caught on their heels and they got beat. And the lesson being is that their majority, our majority, is never a safe one. Elections happen, and elections have consequences, and anything can happen. And so you can't take for granted that you're going to win the next election. And so now that the left sees that conservatives in Wyoming can pull off a victory, we did in 2024 and 2022 and in 2020, they're going to go for broke this time, would be my guess. And all of the people that have claimed to be conservative but have left they have put the messages of who they are on their campaign materials: healthcare that meets us where we are, Medicaid expansion, building our communities, fully fund the Business Council, complete government intervention in the free market, on and on, and probably abortion on demand. That would be Melissa Butcher. So they have told you exactly who they are, and this time around, they're going to go for broke, my friends. So now, we just talked about Texas, and that Democrats and Republicans will come together as Texans to defeat Ken Paxton. So he's telling you that the coalition, the same type of coalition that was put together for the 2026 primary, is also the same thing that's happening in Texas. I don't think that Tellerico is going to win. God, I hope not. But he may. And if Texas has a Democrat senator, I mean, that's as good as gold for the Democrats. It will show them that they can win a statewide election, and that they're 50% of the way to completely flipping Texas to Democrat representation. But there's another one. Okay, so now we've got Michigan, we've got Texas, and what about another largely Republican state, one that has been really making some really conservative moves in their legislature, putting in good conservative legislation? Texas. I showed you this lady before. Excuse me, I shouldn't misuse the term lady. But this one, her last name is Nixon, and she just won the Democrat primary in Texas. Check this out.
And folks often say, like, oh, are you going to be able to work across the aisle with the Republicans? They're not trying to work across the aisle. They're literally trying to kill us. Mm-hmm. And they are doing it on camera.
Yeah.
And not being held accountable. Mm-hmm. Like, actually, state-sanctioned violence. Mm-hmm. They've been doing it in the Black community, and they're doing it even more so now with ICE. ICE is now a weaponized paramilitary force that is designed to terrorize us.
God help Florida if that woman wins. But now you have Michigan, you have New York, you have Texas, now we have Florida. And the Democrats and liberal Republicans has flipped Wyoming. And so this is happening across the country. And, the longer that we keep our head in the sand and we don't recognize that these things are actually happening, that there are communists and socialists that are active in the country. And, so during the election, I ran some ads for the Wyoming Republican Party on my social media, and you probably saw them. One of them was about the Democratic Socialists of America, and you would not believe the response that one got. I mean, if you want to, if you have like 20 or 30 minutes to burn, go look at the comments under that post. It's still on my on the Cowboy State Politics Facebook page, but it's incredible. People in Wyoming, and it's hard on Facebook. It's hard to tell who's in Wyoming and who's not. It's kind of a global thing, but go look at the comments. A lot of them were, well, you don't know the difference between socialism and communism. Socialism is great. It's democratic socialism. And, Ken, if communism is a big poo, socialism is a poo with sprinkles. I mean, I can't remember exactly how Ken put it, but that's pretty much it. Maybe a little bow on it. But the only difference between socialism and communism, philosophically, is in socialism, the government does not own the means of production. In communism, it does. And so practically, this is how you work out. You may own your business, but the government tells you how you're going to run it. I guess technically you own it, but you kind of work for the government. In communism, government owns the means of production. That is the big difference between socialism and communism. So don't let anybody dissuade you, and certainly not in the Democrat Party. Those people do exist in the Democrat Party, and some of them are camped out in the Republican Party, though it takes another name. And one of those, for example, is newly reelected Julie Jarvis. Now, she claims that she votes according to surveys. All right, well, we don't run our country that way, but it is an attempt to at pure democracy. Pure democracy is nothing more than mob rule, and that's how she votes. It's on her campaign literature. She's very open about it. Elisa Campbell, definitely pro-abortion, definitely pro-LGBTQ, ZXP, WDS. I haven't looked at her vote totals or how much spending that she voted for, but it was a lot. I think she may have been one step above Marilyn Connolly. And so there are these people in the Wyoming legislature, but up until now, they've been pretty good at keeping their masks on. And so one of the biggest mistakes that we make is to say, well, this is Wyoming, and a Wyoming Democrat, well, it's very different than a national Democrat. No, it's not. Maybe there was a time in the past that may have been true. I don't believe so, but maybe there was a time in the past where that had been true. Not anymore. Not anymore, my friends. When you have people who are advocating for abortion on demand, that is absolutely not true. They are just as radical. And if you're willing to hold a sign with a swastika on it in downtown Sheridan on the courthouse steps, there's not very much distance between you and the National Democrats. And so don't kid yourself. Don't stick your head in the sand. There are these people in Wyoming, and they do believe the same things. And we may see some flashes of it during the next legislative session. Don't worry, my friends. I will be there to witness them all and record them for you. But it's truly amazing, my friends, how far we've come. Think about, in the 1980s. Okay, so we had Ronald Reagan as president, and our argument was, should we spend more on government programs? That was the Democrat position. Or should we just let the free market run its course, trickle-down economics and supply-side economics? I mean, that was the discussion. Now the discussion is, should we take over the means of production? There is a chasm between those two. But now, in 2026, as Charlie Kirk said, we were 6 years away, and now we've hit the nail on the head. So let's go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on an Open Line Friday. I'm your host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everything you do for the program. And every time you watch a show, do me a favor and just share it. It helps the algorithm. It helps build the audience of Cowboy State Politics, and we're going to need it in the next 2 years, my friends, because we know that the mainstream media is not going to report the truth. And the best example of that is a piece I told you about yesterday when they were discussing Kenneth Roberts beating Scott Heiner. And if you read the piece, it just sounds like Kenneth Roberts ran a great race and everything was great. I mean, just won it right outright, ran a good race, going door to door. Truth is, he spent most of the race in the hospital. The dude had a stroke. He's been in ICU for a long time. He may still be in ICU, and there's some question as to whether or not he can even fulfill his office. That's a news story. And the cow pie, nah, they didn't even report on it. Not important at all. And if you read all of the stories, and let me just go to the cow pie real quick so I can run down the headlines for you. I did a little bit of this yesterday. So we've got, let's see here, Tuesday night massacre. And let's see here, there's more of them, more yesterday. Libertarian. Oh, yeah. So the Libertarian Party, we should probably talk about this in just a second. But the headlines, if I can get to them, devastating primary losses, which I guess that was true. Freedom Caucus massacre by the numbers. And it goes on and on. And the language is bloodbath, massacre, on and on and on. But it is the cow pie taking a victory lap, and you know, to some degree, I would probably do the same thing had the roles been reversed. But at least on the open range record, it would have been factual. You know, if we had a candidate that was resigned to intensive care, we'd tell you about it. The cow pie, not so much, because they don't want anything to taint the victory of the Democrats. And the redcoats in the Wyoming legislature. This is activist journalism, and it's I wish I could come up with a better term. Maybe you could help me if you've got a better term for the opinionated activist journalism that is the cow pie and the Wyoming media. Go ahead and drop it in the comments. We need to come up with a better term for it. But really, it's not journalism at all. It's opinion masquerading as journalism. And, you know, and all you got to do is read any of Claire McDuff's writing, and you'll find it. It's very much favors the political left in this state. Now, how many articles have you read that are favorable of one of the conservatives? Just one article. Can you find one of them? Now, do the opposite. How many articles can you find that are very critical of conservatives? All of them that mention a conservative are pretty critical. So it's not journalism. It's not the news by any stretch. It's best I can come up with this. It's an activist opinion journalism. But if you've got a better term for it, drop it in the comments. So the Libertarian Party, they have nominated their people for the general election, and they tried to nominate Cale Case, Nancy Case, and Democrat Carly Provenza. Now, the problem with this is that Nancy Case is a registered Republican. Now, he's not really a Republican. Really, he's a Democrat. And I've been told that prior to him getting cancer, that Nancy was actually kind of a conservative libertarian type. But he's gone full-blown off-the-rails Democrat. He's tried to push Medicaid expansion at least 18 times that I can count. And in one form or another, either in bill form or an amendment, or he had another person run it, but 18 times it's been defeated in the Wyoming legislature, and most of them are Nancy Case. So the Libertarian Party nominates a Democrat and a Democrat in a red coat, a Democrat in Republican clothing for their offices. According to the cow pie, and I quote, the Libertarian Party of Wyoming announced Thursday that it nominated one Republican and one Democrat for state legislative offices at its convention this year, both of whom it considers libertarian. Doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about the so-called Libertarian Party in Wyoming? We consider them libertarian, a full-blown radical Democrat like Carly Provenza. They are Lander-based Republican Cale Case and Laramie-based Democrat Representative Carly Provenza. And the Secretary of State's office rejected the nominations. Wyoming Libertarian Party Chair Zachary Padilla said in a Thursday phone interview. But for the party, the gesture is about freedom of association and of people to choose their representation. I believe our goal in particular is to make sure voters have the right to vote for the right candidate, not just the party. So in other words, the Libertarian Party, which is a political party, is claiming that we should reject all political parties in favor of, and this is their goal, an open primary. So eliminate the influences of political parties in the state, because during the primary election, they saw the effect. Now, none of those candidates won, but the Republican Party nominated candidates, and they see the danger in that if the Republican Party was more active and if they were more influential and if they continued to endorse candidates, when that becomes mainstream, Republicans, the people that just vote the party line, are going to look at that and say, well, the Republican Party nominated them. Let's go for it. That's the danger, and that's why they want an open primary system, so it doesn't matter. They continue. The party also sought to nominate a third state lawmaker, Republican Senator Bob Ide, but Ide could not be reached. Ide, who lost his bid for the GOP nomination Tuesday and might have benefited from the safety net, did not immediately return a late-day voicemail. Case conversely won his race for the U.S. Senate, but the problem is that neither of those people are members of the Libertarian Party. And state law says if you're going to run in that primary or, under that banner, you have to be a member. And so the Secretary of State rejected those nominations. And just, we haven't listened to this soundbite for a while, so I thought, why the heck not play it? Here we go.
But we have to pass the bill so that Nancy. You can find out what is in it.
So that's what Nancy Case said. Now let me find K.O. Case's version real quick. Hold on just a second. I should have had these all prepped, but the problem is you got all of these sound bites, and let's see here. Constitutional creative rights, slowest amendments, election bills. Here we go. So we just heard Nancy Pelosi say we have to pass the bill to find out what was in it. Here is K.O. Case's version.
This is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal. We can't even start to figure it out until we pass this bill.
Now you know why I call him Nancy Case, because he says the exact same thing, and he claims to be a Republican. Okay, so really, it's just another example of how the Libertarian Party was part of the coalition with the Democrats and the liberal Republicans to take the primary, and they did it with extraordinary efficiency. I got to hand it to them. They did a bang-up job. But the point I'm getting at here is that news needs to be news. Now, the show that you're watching right now, this is an opinion show. And it's you watch it to hear my opinion of what's going on in Wyoming politics. The Open Range Record is different. That's a news platform. And the things that are news, we label it news. Things that are opinion, we label it opinion. And if you disagree, you let us know and say, hey, David, I don't think this news article is really news. I think it's opinion. Then we'll check it out. And if we agree, we'll change it. That's how news is supposed to be. So years ago, when you'd actually get the newspaper, and I'm not talking about the stupid propaganda sheets that you get now, but 30, 40, 50 years ago, maybe you get the newspaper and you'd have, front page news and probably 2 or 3 more pages. And then you would have the opinions section, and it was labeled, these are opinions. Now there are columns on the Cowpipe from idiots like Rod Miller. Okay, so those are obviously opinion. But when they report the news, you can read it, and it's very clear, like the bias that is implicit in it that is masquerading as news. So let me give you an example of what news actually should be. And this is from The Blaze, and it may be a guy that you've never even heard of, but there was a representative, Corey Mills, and he had a number of problems. Let's see here. let's see here. Well, Patrick says, call them propaganda. That's true. And he's talking about the opinion journalism. That's true. They are propaganda. Cowboy State Daily, the pretenders. Okay, get in there. If you got any other ideas, drop them in the comments. And if we find one that rings true and that I like it, then we'll go with it. It's hard work coming up with all of these nicknames for everybody. Sometimes I need a little bit of help. All right, so this is from The Blaze. The story Corey Mills couldn't outrun. How a Blaze News investigation exposed a congressman's lies. And by the way, The Blaze was started for the very same reason that I started the Open Range Record, to actually do news, to do journalism. That's the whole reason behind it. And to, be completely open and honest and say, this is news, this is opinion. So here's what The Blaze says, and it begins this way. For more than a year, Representative Corey Mills of Florida has survived one revelation after another. Questions about his marriage, questions about his military record, questions about stories he told about being wounded in Iraq, allegations involving the abuse and blackmail of women, questions surrounding his businesses and finances, a House Ethics Committee investigation. Now, was the story Corey Mills told about Corey Mills true? Through all of it, the Florida congressman remained defiant. Stories were dismissed as attacks, and how often is that? How often have I published you the truth? Shown you the truth of what Eric Barlow says, or Ogden Driscoll, or Cale Case, or any of them, and it's been labeled an attack. Sometimes by alleged conservatives. Oh, it's an attack. Why are you attacking Eric Barlow? I'm just telling you what he said in 2003 to Congress, that we need to get rid of fossil fuels. That's not an attack. That's the truth. Okay, stories were dismissed as attacks while reporters were accused of spreading falsehoods. When Blaze News began asking questions about his marriage and religious history, Mills became combative and raised the prospect of litigation. When we later assembled 10 of the most significant contradictions in his public record, his spokeswoman offered a 2-word response: all gossip. And by the way, and if I can go back real quick to what, hopefully I still got this up. Yeah. So when I reached out to Eric Barlow about his 2003 testimony, he lied to me. Let me just read to you his testimony again, and then I'll give you his response. This leads me to my final point, which is that there has not been a meaningful acknowledgement that we must move beyond non-renewable sources of energy. It's time for this nation to be a world leader and transform our energy paradigm. There's that word, transform. It is reasonable to expect that fossil fuels will have a role to play, but it must be one of transition and not reliance. So that's his statement to Congress. Okay, it is in the congressional record. Here is his response to my request for comment. Quote, calling my 2003 testimony anti-energy is simply false. I explicitly supported responsible energy development while standing up for Wyoming landowners and protecting our water. It is not false. It's not a lie. It's absolutely the truth of what he said to Congress. And what is a lie is his response to me. Oh, it's all false, right? Okay, so this Corey Mills character, he's doing the exact same thing that Eric Barlow did. Oh, it's all gossip. It's all gossip. It's all false. Pay no attention to that. Mills lost the Republican primary to former television anchor Ryan Elijah, who took roughly 47% of the vote to Mills's 34%. A 2-term Republican congressman who once appeared to have a promising future in the party will now leave Congress in humiliating fashion. The results cannot be credited to any one single news organization or investigation. Mills faced scrutiny from law enforcement, congressional investigators, political opponents, local and national journalists, and ultimately members of his own party. But long before his political support collapsed, Blaze News had begun asking a simple question. Was the story Corey Mills told about Corey Mills true? What followed became one of the most extensive investigations the Blaze had ever undertaken. Our reporters interviewed former soldiers and military contractors who had served alongside Mills. We tracked down records. We spoke with former girlfriends, businesses, associates, political figures, and people who had known Mills before he entered Congress. Again And again, the answers produced more questions. What about his marriage? Listen to this. This is crazy. The investigation began after a February 2025 domestic disturbance call involving Mills, which drew attention to the fact that surprised even some of the people around him. Mills was still legally married and going through a divorce and claiming to be with a different woman. Married to a different woman. Okay. This led the Blaze to a 2014 Virginia marriage record. And listen to this. This guy appeared to be a clean-cut Republican. We obtained and verified the marriage certificate. It showed that Mills and Rana al-Sadi had been married by Mohammed al-Manuti, a radical Islamic cleric who had been identified as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation Hamas funding case and the 1993 World Trade Center bombing plot. That was his minister at his marriage. Holy crap. Mills confirmed the marriage to Blaze News in an interview. He denied converting to Islam and said that he had not known about al-Hafnuti's background. However, the questions did not end there. 5 former associates subsequently told the Blaze that Mills had told them he converted to Islam. Mills continued to deny that account. Remember, it's all false. It's all false. It's gossip. It's all made up. Don't worry about it. The soldiers who remembered a very different story of Corey Mills. He had a bunch of his political identity around his military and defense contracting experience. He presented himself as a battle-tested veteran and private military operative. His campaign told voters that he had been, quote, wounded twice while deployed. The people in his unit said he was never wounded. And when confronted with this, Mills said, well, when the bomb went off, and it was a roadside bomb he was referring to, that I bumped my head against the side of the SUV or the Humvee. So I had a concussion. That's why I was wounded. Mills blew up his own wounded story twice. Eventually, Mills himself provided perhaps the most damaging evidence against one of his signature biographical claims. In 2022, campaign advertisement had declared that he was wounded twice in Iraq. Mills said during the first explosion, he hit his head inside an armored vehicle. That was the concussion, so that's what he claims to be wounded. Then came the second explosion. Mills acknowledged that he wasn't inside the vehicle that was struck. No, I wasn't wounded on that, Mills said. But his key campaign statement is, I was wounded twice in Iraq. When the truth is, the only thing he actually had happened to him is he bumped his head. So then there's the allegations from Miss United States. Lindsay Langton, then the reigning Miss United States and Republican official in Florida, told the Blaze News in July of 25 that she had been romantically involved with Mills. After the relationship ended, Langston accused Mills of threatening to distribute intimate videos of her to men she might date later. So, revenge porn. What a classy guy that he is. Her allegations resulted in an investigation by the Columbia County Sheriff's Office. And later, Langston made the allegations about Mills's finances. She described people arriving at his home and sharing with what she characterized as bags of cash, and another incident involving money after a dinner. And then in 2026 midterms on the horizon, Mills appeared capable of surviving it all until an ethics investigation. Now, this is a great article. You should go read it, even if you don't know who Corey Mills is, and I really don't know. But this is a great piece of journalism on the Blaze. This is what real investigative journalism is supposed to be about. Now, the open range record, we tried really hard during the session, after the session, and during the campaign to produce some reports that were absolutely rock solid and that told you who these people really are. We published 2 pieces about Ogden Driscoll's history, one with the Devil's Tower land trade, and the other about his involvement in the Senate for the conservation easement, that he's the guy that built the system that allowed the conservation easement, which netted him in excess of $1 million. We did another piece on Eric Barlow and talked about the nonprofit board that he sat on, that he sold his lamb to, and then claimed a tax write-off, or that he could claim a tax write-off for that. So that is what investigative journalism is supposed to be about. It's not about drive-by opinionated propaganda that comes out of the cow pie. So now going forward, from here on out, my friends, like I told you, the mainstream Wyoming press, they're going to take a giant lurch to the left. They're going to have to, because they don't have to hide now. Most of the people that write the news are, radical leftists, including Claire McDuff, even though the she once told a friend of mine, well, I have to be a conservative. I'm from Riverton. You mean the same county with Cale Case and Lloyd Larson? Yeah. Just because you live in Riverton doesn't mean that you're conservative, as I'm sure a lot of this audience can attest to. But they're going to take a giant lurch to the left, and there's no reason for them not to. They've won the election. And by this, they is because they were deeply involved in the election. And so the masks are going to come off, my friends. And our job going forward, if you want to win in 2 years, or make some gains in 2 years, rather, we're going to have to do the work, because the media is not going to do it. The politicians are going to lie to us about it. And so we've got to be the ones holding them accountable, which this audience always has. I can't tell you how many times I've done a story and I've seen the same evidence pop up on social media posts afterwards, and people have actually looked it up for themselves. This audience is incredible. And I know that you'll do the research, and you'll be the ones that are looking up, these people's voting record and following who and what they are. And I know that you'll do the work. The trick is convincing other people to do the work. And of course, we have the Open Range Record now, which I promised you, by the way, that's a journalism site with some opinion on it too. But we do produce news, truth, and what Harry calls truth and fact-based journalism. That's what it's called. And so one more comment from Harry, and then we'll wrap up the story here. He says that, let's see here. It's not just the so-called media calling the truth attacks. It's the electeds themselves saying when they don't like the light being shed upon them. Let's look right here in Sheridan County. Oh, boy, isn't that the truth? Talk about the clerk's office. The truth is the election. We published two pieces on this that – the testing of the machines was completely screwed up. And if there were ever a basis for a lawsuit, it's right there. And most of the machines in the state were not certified. I don't know how you can certify an election with machines that aren't certified. But I mean, they're great examples. And here in Sheridan County, the Sheridan Press, they are just as bad as the cow pie. Sheridan Media, they probably run a quick second to them. And so, it's, yes, work is hard, but this audience, my friends, and I'm not just blowing up your head here. I mean, you guys truly do the work. And it is appreciated. I get tips all the time on stories to cover. But the trick is for us to convince our fellow, as Charlie Cole put it during his call, our fellow countrymen. We've got to do that, and it's our job to do it. And Patrick, probably the best comment we can give, the best compliment we can give to this audience is we're not low information types. No, you are not, my friends. All right. Well, that pretty much does it for today's edition of Open Line Friday. Thank you for those that called in. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you share this program. If you watch an episode and you like it, go ahead and share it. And just, we got to grow this audience so that in 2 years, we're shining a light on all of these Democrats that are hiding in the Republican Party and that did win elections. At least the unofficial results say. So, my friends, for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good weekend, my friends. Don't miss Weekend Update tomorrow. We'll be back at it next week.